Yeah, this is Harold McDaniel. I decided to chime in on what I typically would steer away from, which I don't believe in confronting and having debates with people who are not with the whole creation reality, especially if they are not believers in Jesus Christ. I think I can safely gather that Professor Dave is the guy who I have chosen to analyze. I think it's safe to say that Professor Dave is not a believer in the King James Version Bible, to say the least. And I ran across his video, and again, these types of videos that guys make to debunk flat earth, I don't listen to them because I know the same old rhetoric. I've heard it. I hear the rhetoric in person from individuals, so I know it's pretty much the same things being said. In a nutshell, it's a fantasy world that has its own set of rules that can be manipulated and changed at will. It's been well documented and proven that the globe is a fantasy. It's no point in going through all this, but what I wanted to do is to lift a couple of sound bites from Professor Dave's video, and he and the Globebusters, these guys, the Globebusters, I respect what they do. They do good work. I mean, they got some outstanding videos, and they drive it home that Earth is a level plane. I mean, they got it. But I don't particularly agree with their style. I haven't heard every video from the Globebusters, but I don't hear language of Matthew 24:14. I have an end game to my campaign on the level plane of a stationary Earth, as described in King James Version Bible. My end game is to bring an end to the world. Yeah. Matthew 24:14 says, "And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached as a witness in all the world, as a witness to all nations, and then shall the end come." That scripture is very misunderstood. I've covered it in another video. This gospel of the kingdom, I am convinced it is not the gospel of the resurrection of Yeshua. Start using that name a little bit more. It's not the gospel of the resurrection of Yeshua. It is the gospel. The gospel of the resurrection has been preached in all the world. Everybody knows of the gospel of the resurrection. The gospel of the kingdom is what people do not know about. They don't know there is a kingdom, a physical kingdom over their heads, over a covering called the firmament. This is what the world does not know. Matthew 24 basically promises, if this news is preached, the end will come. It doesn't say if people believe it. So I really don't care if people reject my videos and lampoon me personally, because I know my reward is coming. So my message to the Globebusters is, okay, I'm not going to criticize what you guys are doing. You keep driving that point home. Prove your point. Prove your point. You win the battle. You're winning the battle. You're beating these guys down. But is this the best method? Are you preaching the end game? Are you preaching with some compassion? I know Professor Dave will probably want to puke if he hears a flat earther showing compassion to him. I'm showing compassion to Professor Dave because he's in another world. There are two realities on Palace Earth, and the reality that the physical reality is what everybody experiences. Everybody experiences a flat stationary plane with luminaries orbiting in our very close atmosphere within the dome. Everybody experiences that now. Everyone does not accept it, and all of us have been on the side of Professor Dave. We've all been there. Globebusters, you've been there. Everybody's been where Professor Dave is right now. I'm assuming Professor Dave actually believes what he is preaching. He could very well be just somebody hired and he's pretending that he's believing the stuff that he's teaching, but he comes across as genuine. But the reality of a globe, a spinning globe, it is real to them. And I just had to take a step back and realize how does this affect people who to hear this reality of the true creation, who have never been truth seekers ever in their lives, have never had a notion that they need to be seeking truth. They're not familiar with the scriptures of King James Version Bible. The Lord says, seeking you shall find. The Lord admonishes his sheep, those who hear his voice, to seek. I don't think he's talking to non-believers. They're dead. Now, it sounds like I'm trying to be insulting. I'm not. Our reality is dead to them. The reality of John 3:21, we walk in the light. To guys like Professor Dave, we're dead. And vice versa. So, but I felt like I need to step in and say a few things to Professor Dave. And I'm going to go over some of his clips, portions of his video, and point out how even in the narrative of the globe, the reality of Mystery Babylon, which will bring in their Antichrist, within the narrative that Professor Dave is using, it is not realistic. And he's just going to run away his followers, which would be a good thing. But as long as the followers turn to Yeshua. But it does no good coming in and then just, crapping all over everybody's picnic and not giving them the end game. Okay, I'm going to prove to you that you've been lied to. You don't live on a globe. You live on a stationary flat plane. And then, okay, we win. We got to preach them Christ. Preach them you have a loving creator hovering over you, and he put you in this creation specifically to have fellowship with you, brought you out of nothing and brought you into this world that he created, that he watches over, he micromanages it, and he wouldn't dare be away from us, light years in another dimension away from us. No. So we have to, if you're going to break this news to someone, you got to give them an answer, an in-game option versus, spiking the ball and doing your little pole dance in the end zone because you scored another victory over the globe idiots. Now, I'm not calling people idiots, but this is the mentality of a lot of these so-called flat earthers. Not every flat earther is a truther. Not every flat earther is interested in heaven. And I think half these flat earth channels I'm seeing now are troll channels. They preach the truth, but they are eliminating the end game. Matthew 24:14. They don't talk much about firmament. Globebusters, I believe, do. The reason why we've been lied to hide us from Yeshua, Jesus Christ. Now, Professor Dave, I'm not asking you to come forward and confess your sins and just believe on the name of Jesus Christ. I hope he moves you to do it. But the information that you're giving out on your videos, I am going to attempt to show you the flaw, for lack of a better term, and to see if you would at least consider my presentation. And part of the presentation, the one that I really want to just hit right off the bat, the imagery that you guys show of this flat Earth. Okay, your first deal is the problem with changing a ball into a flat plane. Okay, and then you say you'll fall off the edge. The standard mockery on flat earth is that we will fall off the edge, okay, and you won't do the honest assessment of our position, which is there's no edge to fall off. It is enclosed. It is a giant ice wall. There are barriers. There's land beyond the ice, and then there's a firmament that joins down to the foundation of the earth. There is no falling off. But let's just say I'm gonna stick with your argument, and I'm gonna go with this open edge. Okay, why are we gonna fall off? Now you still have your version of flat earth as a disc floating in space. Okay, no pillars, no firmament. It floats in space. Why do we fall off the edge, but we don't fall off the ball? Why can't gravity apply to the flat plane? Why can't gravity keep you on a flat plane? It'd be more likely to keep you from falling off an edge versus the bottom of a ball. But we'll get to that. You have an answer for being on the bottom and all that, but I just wanted to hit that point before I show this presentation, and it's coming right up.
In actuality, it is quite clear why you adopt this viewpoint, because you just accept whatever you hear if it's what you want to believe. This is why your beliefs are baseless. Since you're incapable of doing anything other than repeating what you are told, you assume that others are doing the same thing, but they are not. Those that are educated in the sciences understand how things work and use this information to build technology, such as computers and the internet, both of which you use to claim that the science that produced them isn't real, in a display of irony so thick that you could cut it with a knife.
So you have here actually I went with the last part of his 9th point. And to see these guys like Professor Dave, through their frustration, they will use misnomers like flat earthers do not say science is fake. If he's hearing flat earthers say that, see, this is the issue with doing a video like this, because Professor Dave I don't believe he's going to be completely honest. He can show evidence that there's so-called flat earthers saying things like this. Mainstream real truth seekers who believe the true creation do not say science is fake. Yes, we use technology. The technology is real. It just so happens that the same people responsible for technology also understand the truth of creation, and they understand that they have to hide it. Professor Dave is well aware of this, but I'm saying this for the sake of individuals who may come across this video, maybe after watching the video, much like Professor Dave's, and maybe a bit dumbfounded and not know how to cope with such language. Professor Dave mentions the irony of ironies, so thick you can cut it with a knife as if it were butter, as he shows here. The irony of ironies, Professor Dave, is that you're using the Lord God's creation of a flat surface and the luminaries that he has put within his firmament, and you are using it as if it is a round spinning sphere, spinning and traveling around a gigantic sun that's 93 million miles away. That is the irony of ironies, Professor, that you are using the true creation that is a flat, stable, stationary plane, and you've turned it into a globe. Irony of ironies. Now I'm going to go take a clip from point number 10, and then I'm going to go through what I think are the more relevant points that are worthwhile talking about. Coming right up.
Pertain, the pièce de résistance, the claim that we have all been indoctrinated, that we have been brainwashed by schools, by the government, by NASA, by Freemasons, by Hollywood. Take your pick. Well, as as I have demonstrated in this clip, you all say the same exact ridiculous things word for word, like you're reciting the oath of the Flat Earth fraternity.
Another misnomer. Professor Dave should easily be able to prove that so-called flat earthers are saying the exact same thing word for word, as if we were reciting an oath from a fraternity. He's over the top with his accusation. This should be a sure sign to anyone who is new to this arena of truth seeking. When you have someone defending a falsehood, the biggest giveaway that they are on the losing side is frustration and false accusations, misnomers. We're all saying this exact same thing. He should be able to produce this evidence on his video, on his computer, and show us. He should have been more than glad to do that, but it's just a figure of speech he's using in frustration. And this method, unfortunately, tends to be effective on certain individuals who are looking for an out. And by him saying we say you've all been brainwashed, now you can hear the truth. See, the truth seeker does not say you've been brainwashed. The truth seeker admits, I've been brainwashed. I was brainwashed as a child, as we all were. The truth seekers have been truth seekers because of this blessing, this gift that we've been given from the Lord God. He has shown us the out from the deception, so we're not standing on some podium, as if we were never in the same boat that you are in. Our Professor Dave claims to be. I'm still not convinced that he's believing what he's teaching. I think I'm not going to call him a shill or a troll. That's what he wants me to say, but I believe he's doing a job. It's very important to him. But again, we all acknowledge, the truth seeker acknowledges that he was brainwashed, just as, or I prefer to say the word program. We were programmed, but we've been unplugged through grace. I'll let him continue.
Do you do when you want to brainwash someone? You tell them they have already been brainwashed. That's what flat earth priests do. They tell you that you've been brainwashed so that you are nice and receptive to the brainwashing. They tell you that everything you know is a lie so that they can lie to you. It's Human Psychology 101. Why do they do this? Money, status. It's a way for con men to capitalize on the gullible few who exhibit a combination of ignorance and suggestibility. It's a cult. You're part of a cult. Not like the kill yourselves with Kool-Aid kind, but it's not that far off. So get angry, call me a shill, call me whatever you want. I guarantee that many of you will bring up these 10 things I just talked about while commenting on this very video, demonstrating that you didn't even watch any of it. Most of the rest of you will avoid addressing anything I said and just vomit a bunch of other different flat earth talking points. But maybe a portion of you will have the courage to accept that you've fallen for a hoax at one time or another, myself included. Just admit that to yourself and walk away. And when you're ready to learn science in earnest, my tutorials will be waiting for you. Thanks for watching.
Totally agree with you, Professor Day. We've all fallen for a hoax, and the hoax that we all have fallen for is the planet Earth, solar system. We are now out of the hoax. But he says something interesting. He said, why do con artists, we accuse us of being con artists and we're doing it for money? He's selling his t-shirts here on his channel, and he's claiming that con artists like flat earthers do it for control and for money, and he's selling his t-shirts. How ironic. But he invites us to be angry, call me a shield, and that's what the system wants. They want it so badly to turn into this battle as to distract us from Matthew 24:14, to distract us from the big news. Besides a flat earth that doesn't move, a real heaven where the Holy Great One dwells. Okay, read the book of Enoch, please. Very disturbing book if you don't want there to be a heaven. Guys like Professor Dave provide this platform for even Christians to indulge and to escape the reality of the real earth, the real creator, the true God, through his son Jesus Christ, has made this earth. So I'm going to go ahead and go to point one, the most important, the most relevant point that I think of his 10 that Professor Dave made. I'm going to go with number one coming right up here. The first one coming right up.
Some of you may be aware of my recent foray into the Flat Earth community, most notably with this lengthy response to the Globebusters. For about 2 months now, the comments section of that video has been a consistent hotbed of activity, with hundreds of Flat Earthers stopping by to share their opinions. For people who claim that globetards just repeat what they were told in school, you guys sure do all say the exact same things. And I don't just mean the same arguments, I mean the same things word for word, like they were copied and pasted from some manifesto. This is because you all watch the same ridiculous YouTube videos made by the same handful of con men, and you all quote them verbatim without applying a shred of critical thinking. So now that I am intimately familiar with your greatest hits, I just had to make one more video so that I could share the 10 things that all Flat Earthers say. If you're a regular person and you haven't seen my other 2 Flat Earth videos, you may want to check those out first for a little bit of context. But if you're a Flat Earther yourself, don't bother. I'll be speaking directly to you throughout this video. Let's begin. Number one extremely problematic side effect of taking the globe and flattening it out into a plane is that gravity makes no sense, and there is no reason for things to fall to the ground.
Hold on there, Professor. Now, you said you're going to do a list of 10 things that all Flat Earthers say. Flat Earthers, truthers do not say the problem with making a globe into a flat plane is that gravity makes no sense and there's no reason for things to fall to the ground. Let's repeat what you just said to make sure I said that right.
One extremely problematic side effect of taking the globe and flattening it out into a plane is that gravity makes no sense, and there is no reason for things to fall to the ground.
Okay, that is a method of double speech. We say gravity makes no sense. We don't say gravity makes no sense. We say there is no gravity. Gravity makes perfect sense in a fantasy world if there were real people who walk on a ball upside down but not yet be upside down, it would make sense. And again, I don't want to contradict myself when I said earlier, this world is real to people who dwell in darkness. This world is real. But again, Flat Earthers, a misnomer. We don't say gravity makes no sense. We as truthers say gravity does not exist. Gravity does not exist in the real world. Gravity does not exist on a flat plane. There is no need for gravity as it is theorized, as it was conjured according to the narrative. Gravity has this selective ability to keep things from falling off a ball when they need not be in the air, and the things that need to be in the air don't get gripped and pulled down to the ground. That is a fantasy. Flat Earthers do not say there is no reason for things to fall. We don't say that because there is a reason for things to fall if they're heavier than air. Okay, I will go on.
Things to fall to the ground. All objects accelerate towards the ground at 9.8 meters per second squared. That's an indisputable fact. And it is also an indisputable fact that any acceleration requires a force to produce it. This is how cars drive, planes fly, people walk, cats jump. It's how literally all motion works. Even charlatans like the Globebusters accept at least this much, which is why they go off on their rants about magnetic magic, as you may have seen in my previous video. But quite comically, most Flat Earthers don't even do this. Most of you address this problem by simply listing 2 words: density and buoyancy. Well, I hate to break it to you guys, but these are not forces. Forces are vectors. They have a magnitude, which means a numerical amount, and a direction, which means they have to point somewhere. Density is simply mass per unit volume, or how much matter sits in a particular space. It doesn't point anywhere. And buoyancy is simply a measurement of an object's tendency to float. So allow me to repeat, these are not Forces. Forces are vectors. They have a magnitude, which means a numerical amount, and a direction, which means they have to point somewhere. Density is simply mass per unit volume, or how much matter sits in a particular space. It doesn't point anywhere. And buoyancy is simply a measurement of an object's tendency to float. So allow me to repeat, these are not forces. This is trivial to prove. You say that objects fall down because they are more dense than the air below them. Why down? Why not up? Or sideways? When you let go of a ball, there is air all around it. How does it know to fall down? Also, objects fall down when they are in a vacuum, which means there is no air below them. What's happening there? Face the facts. Things accelerate down towards the ground because of a downward force. That force is gravity, which pulls everything towards the center of the earth, which is its center of mass. Denser things displace less dense things because gravity exists. More mass means a greater gravitational attraction. This is clearly why things that are less dense than water float on water. Again, because gravity exists. Rocks are pulled down harder than water, which is pulled down harder than air. Some of your more popular retorts to this include wondering how oceans stay on the earth while birds and insects can fly. It's because birds and insects have wings. They flap them and generate an upward force. If that force exceeds the gravitational force, they go up. Oceans can't do this because oceans don't have wings. Individual water molecules can't evaporate and go up into the sky because they are so tiny. But when they get up to where it is colder and accumulate into clouds, they eventually condense back into liquid water. And guess what happens? They fall back down as rain. Hopefully you are familiar with rain. As for planes and other macroscopic objects, again, they go up only when a force is applied. When you throw a ball up into the sky, the force imparted on the ball by your arm is greater than the gravitational force. But as soon as it leaves your hand, no more force is being applied, and only the gravitational force is acting upon the ball. So that velocity gets smaller and smaller, hits zero, at which point it starts to fall, and it falls faster and faster until it hits the ground. Gravity. Gravity exists. Period. Saying it is just a theory does nothing but display that you have no idea what a theory is.
Very impressive, Professor. Sounded very legit. Now, I'm going to spend a lot of time, which I don't want to, on this segment, but I think, again, this is the most relevant segment that he touched on, and I'm going to go through point by point. I'm going to start with his first point. So he says all objects fall at 9.8 meters per second square, which is not true. I will demonstrate these objects that I have recorded here. I have a shoe and I have a pillow. The shoe and pillow actually do fall at the same time. I'm assuming it's 9.8 meters a second square. I'm assuming that's that speed. It doesn't matter, but they do fall at the same time. They hit the floor at the same time. But as you see me, I am using a shower cap, plastic shower cap, and I'm using the same shoe, and they don't fall at the same amount. They don't fall at the same rate of speed. Now he has an answer for that. He says objects that don't have as much mass or matter, he would say, objects that don't have as much matter is not affected by gravity at the same rate as objects that do have more matter. So that's their answer for objects not falling at the same speed. So, and then he went into the whole subject of velocity. He said it's also an indisputable fact that all objects have to have a force. All accelerating objects have to have a force to produce it. And then he knows the answer to that is matter. Matter is the force. Matter is what drives objects downward. And he makes a big deal about why does it always go down? Why can't it go this way? Why can't it go that way? So they hijack the known given law that objects that are not supported by air density, objects that have the amount of matter within their mass that exceeds air density's ability to support it, will fall down. But to get around that, they say objects that accelerate have a force that takes them in a certain direction. So they're alluding to that force is not the fact that the amount of matter is greater than the air density's ability to support it. They assign that reality to gravity. They assign it to gravity. And this here is just a matter of people just got to decide with their own intellect that the convenience of certain objects that don't have as much mass, or I'm sorry, that don't have as much matter contained in the mass, will not be affected by gravity. So what does that say about gravity? Gravity only affects things that are heavy enough, not the fact that objects that are heavy enough just fall on their own. Again, the double speech is any object that accelerates has to have a force. And this is their answer to the obvious. The obvious is objects fall on their own, but they assign this acceleration speech, and they willingly assign acceleration to a force. And the force cannot be matter. See, matter is not a force, but gravity is. Okay, so what drives the wind? Professor Dave, wind accelerates. Does gravity drive the wind? And they'll say that, yeah, it's because of gravity, because they'll say, water is held down by gravity, and yet birds are able to fly over the water because birds have wings. And this is a legitimate answer. In their world, that's legit, because birds have wings and they can overcome the force. So again, it's like a Machiavellian style of explanation to force your mind to accept something that doesn't add up. A bird can overcome the force of gravity, but water cannot. Well, water cannot because it doesn't have wings. This is how I know this guy cannot be for real. He expresses a level of intellect to put this video together, but yet he doesn't see that as a joke when he says water doesn't have wings. And to the whole question of density, of buoyancy, objects that float on water are less dense than the water, have more buoyancy than water. So that's why the objects don't sink in the water. And he says that's gravity. He just assigns that to gravity, versus he assigns that to the water's ability to uphold an object that has less density than water, that has more buoyancy, that has buoyancy. And he assigns that reality to gravity. It's because gravity exists. So then that's when they start reaching for straws, as it were. That is a very effective method how they will state a reality that's real. It's a true reality. Buoyancy, dealing with objects on water that float on water. He stated the reality, and then he reversed it and said it's because of gravity. Objects float on water. They're less dense than water, and that's because of gravity. There you go. That is the nonsensical adolescent approach to force someone to believe it, and people will buy it as long as the tone of voice will make a person who is looking for an out to accept that reality, to accept that explanation, I should say, with ease. And it does not involve gravity. But I have a little concern about what I believe their next step is. I ran across I think it was History Channel or one of these these deals on a cable that show, the so-called creation and their answer for creation. And they will eventually come to the end all argument regarding gravity. Unless they've already done it, I just haven't heard about it. They will declare gravity as a entity. Gravity will become an entity. Gravity will become a god. And this will just end all questions. Okay, it has intellect. It is intelligent enough to hold one thing and release another. And I am basing this statement on this clip coming right up.
Earth, the only planet known to maintain life, a product of scientific phenomena and sheer chance. This blue speck in space holds the past, present, and future of our very existence. Approximately 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth formed from particles left over from the creation of our Sun. Gravity drew these particles together to form pebbles, which then formed boulders and eventually the Earth.
And there you have it. So the language here in this documentary says they are suggesting creation. The Babylon is changing the strategy. They will throw in language of creation, but of course it is not Jehovah. It is not Jesus Christ as the creator. It is a overall force that is the creator, and there are multiple creators. The sun was created, and then she says gravity left over, the particles left over from the created sun were created by gravity. So gravity took his turn, his or her turn, to do its part, his or her part, to create our earth as we know it. Let's hear that again.
Approximately 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth formed from particles left over from the creation of our Sun. Gravity drew these particles together to form pebbles, which then formed boulders and eventually the Earth.
So that confirms that what I was saying, Earth was created by gravity. And this is new language to me, and maybe this has been going on for some time. Of course, I have no reason to listen to this garbage, but for the sake of this video, of course, I need to get kind of up to speed on what the narrative has changed to. I'm saying this is relatively new language because I would have heard of this. Gravity is a creator, okay? And this is all Kabbalah language. This is why there is no more arguing creation. Babylon has the upper hand as far as communication and special effects and the ability of basically driving a point home in various subliminal ways through the media, in various forms of media, advertisement, news, entertainment. It's unending. So this is why I say we are at a point where there is no more education. This is all sales pitch. A person's going to have to decide. The truth seekers have done their job. They continue to do their job. We've made our point. And again, once the language has changed by Babylon, and they again have made the creator to be, at least one of the creators in their narrative is actually gravity. This explains why gravity holds on to one object and the other. Like I'm repeating myself over and over. This is why birds are allowed to fly away and water does not fall off the ball. They still cannot explain, rotation. They just avoid. I mean, Professor Dave did hit rotation. I'll touch on a few other points real briefly. Rotation and curvature, things like that, which that's their weakest point, which I'm not too concerned about people falling for that, pardon the pun, but I will touch on it. But again, one more time, gravity will officially one day be announced as a god, as an entity, as an intelligent creator.
continuation for Professor Dave's second point, which is I shouldn't be able to see this because 8-inch per mile square, the formula that the system calculated, the system conjured, Professor Dave successfully turns the tables and blames flat earthers from times past for using this calculation to give a false curvature, because Professor Dave absolutely realizes that the curvature calculator is basically fantasy. Basically, it is absolute fantasy because of an absolute globe that does not exist. The formula 8-inch per mile square has been used and there's no curvature. So Professor Dave basically shows a new calculation that is trigonometry, and it just cannot be figured because it's so complicated. Even he doesn't attempt to do it. I don't hold that against him because he's got nothing to work with on the curve. This issue is the easiest one. Between that and rotation are the two easier points to debunk, for lack of a better term. Even when they used to try the whole, object going into the distance, and, leaving your perspective, and they try to assign the lack of perspective as object departs, you lose perspective. They assign that to curvature. You got Bill Nye using the whole ship going over the horizon and assigning that to curvature, and others have easily proven him wrong, where you lose perspective. You get a camera, a Nikon P900, more than likely draw the object back in. There it is, proving flat distance. Obviously, there's the bridge expansion, no curvature, everything's flat. All these things have been proven over and over and over. And again, Professor Dave resorts to blaming the formula that in which they themselves have calculated, assigning the blame to flat earthers, and then coming up with the proper formula in which he never demonstrates. Doesn't demonstrate it because he knows it does not exist. Not only knows it does not exist, any attempt to demonstrate this extremely difficult formula purposely made as complicated as possible because it takes you nowhere. But basically what Professor Dave is suggesting, this original formula of 8-inch per mile square, absolutely doesn't give you the curve that they desire. So what they need to be careful with is to change and give the proper formula. It's going to have to make the earth bigger because they are relying on the flatness of the earth. Okay, they absolutely know that all you see is flat surface. So their only answer is the curve is so huge and gradual that you can't see it. Well, that means that they have to increase Earth size 5-fold, more likely, and they know they can't do that. So that's why he resorts in just saying it requires trigonometry, and he doesn't attempt to demonstrate it because he knows it would just further expose him. And not him, the narrative. It will expose the narrative as absolute fraud.
Catch up to the 17th century. Number 2, flat earthers all say, I shouldn't see this thing, but I do, so the earth is flat. Then to justify this claim, you all say the same thing, typically with no context whatsoever. 8 inches per mile squared. None of you have any idea what this means. You can't derive it. You can't calculate anything with it. You can't make a prediction with it. You can't tell me anything about this value at all. When I point this out to you, you get very angry, and instead of answering simple questions, you just link me to a bunch of videos made by con men. Well, I'm sorry, friends. Those people are doing incorrect math, or lying, or both, and they are counting on the fact that you won't do any math at all to check up on them. 8 inches per mile squared is not a valid way to measure Earth's curvature. If you understood math, you would immediately see that this squared on miles is totally out of place. That's because this is a parabolic approximation. This is for doing calculations with a parabola. It's possible that you remember this shape from middle school algebra, but I wouldn't be surprised if you don't. As you can see, the Earth is not shaped like this. Correct values that they can use to claim that they shouldn't be able to see something when in fact they totally should. There are dozens of videos on YouTube demonstrating this, several of which reference the actual formula that actually describes Earth's curvature, which as you can see requires trigonometry. Stop blindly repeating what you hear on flat Earth videos and learn some basic math so that you can do these calculations for yourself. Number 3.
In this segment of Professor Dave's illustrations on what flat earthers always say, he's bring up the topic of not what things we should not see, and then he says, but we should see it. As he points out, this illustration on, of course, he's got curved earth. He's got a tower pointing at a certain angle, the opposite direction of the sailboat, and he's showing how we should see it with the proper trigonometry formula, as he mentioned earlier, will allow you to see it on the curve. But what Professor Dave is throwing out a red herring here. He's trying to integrate this curved view that he's claiming we would see, and he's trying to integrate it with this level shot shown here that could be literally miles away. If you have the proper camera equipment, you can draw in an image that has disappeared from your view. You can draw it in because of a flat surface. You can bring the boat back into your perspective because there is no curve. Professor Dave is trying to say that you can do the same thing on a globe. So he's basically saying that the fact that this image here drawing in this boat from miles away with this probably a Nikon P900, he is claiming that you can do the same thing on a curve. It's basically what he's saying here, because he's drawing a straight line from two sloping angles, opposite angles, drawing a straight line, and that's he's claiming that is the level. A globe, people who believe in the globe will not ever acknowledge a true level. They have to integrate their false level into the real world level and just hope that people are naive enough to accept it.
States that he was flying above Tucson, Arizona at 89,000 feet, and he was able to see Los Angeles and the whole western seaboard. Now, of course, this is not possible if the Earth is in fact a spinning ball, because Brian Schull's max view distance would have only been 365 miles, Los Angeles being covered up by 9,970 feet of curved Earth. Let's continue.
I can see the chain of Rocky Mountains from Canada to New Mexico.
Oh, what was that, Brian? Did you just say you could see all the Rocky Mountains?
At 1,000 miles per hour. The implication is that water and everything else should fly off of it like a child getting thrown from a merry-go-round. Well, it's very cute that you get overwhelmed by numbers with 4 digits in them, but in actuality, the Earth spins once per day. One time in 24 hours. Get on a merry-go-round and have someone push you one time around over 24 hours. Not a very thrilling ride, is it? The issue is that the Earth is really, really big. So if instead of using rotational velocity to describe a rotating body, like a normal person, you try to use linear tangential velocity, you're gonna get a pretty big number. But to be honest, it's still not really that big. Planes go more than half that speed, and sitting on a plane at cruising altitude with no turbulence is just like sitting on a chair on the ground. Flat Earth priests cite these big velocities associated with the Earth and the solar system purely for shock value, and you're falling for it. Stop doing that. Furthermore, this little water doesn't stick to a ball challenge is the strawiest straw man that was ever made of straw. The Earth is huge.
Just follow up on what he just said. I'm not even going to go to the whole demonstrating water sticking on the ball, because it's a ridiculous thing to even talk about. Because flat earthers know that there is no ball, there is no spoon, there's no globe for water to stick on, besides being in a fantasy. But what I really want to point out is just to kind of pin Professor Dave down on something I don't think he's doing. I don't think he knows he's making this mistake. He's trying to duck the whole velocity situation. That is their weakest point. Their weakest defense is explaining Earth rotation when nothing's moving. To explain Earth rotation at 1,000 miles an hour without there being a horrific side effect of the Earth cutting through thick atmosphere, 14.5 pounds per square inch atmosphere, would absolutely destroy all life. Life would never exist on a planet with rotation and such steep, heavy curvature. But anyway, besides that, to stay within their narrative, rotation at 1,000 miles an hour is diverted by his technique of him considering not to look at it as linear velocity, or however he says it. Look at it as it's just rotating once a day. If he puts you on a merry-go-round and rotate you whatever amount of speed, he wants individuals to not think too hard about rotation speed, velocity. Think of it as it rotates once a day, not a quarter mile a second, in which it would have to go at that rate, being 23,000 miles around. It takes 24 hours to do a complete rotation. At 23,000 miles around, you would have to, the equator would have to rotate literally a velocity of 1,000 miles an hour. He just very blatantly Machiavellian style. Don't think of it as velocity. Think of it as just rotating once a day, because it's so huge you can't tell it's rotating anyway. And let's just basically not talk about objects flying in the air off the rotating velocity surface, velocity of anywhere between 600,000 miles an hour, how it doesn't affect you being off the ground, let alone the wind shear that would destroy all life. Again, I'm not being fair to their narrative. I'm not being fair to their fantasy. This is all apples and oranges at the end of the day. We're comparing reality to fantasy. And in their fantasy world, they are determined to win. We are looked at as idiots because we are injecting truth into their fantasy world. Truth is not welcome, these people. I'll move on to the next section.
What you hear on Flat Earth videos. Number 7. Many of you say some unintelligible nonsense about water flowing uphill, or that on the globe model some rivers flow uphill. This one is so stupid that I genuinely can't believe any human could fall for it. You'll look at a globe and say that a river flows this way and that this is somehow uphill, because you seem to think that up on the screen is some kind of universal up in space. Well, how about if I turn this a little bit? What do you know? Now it's down. Listen up. There is no up and down in space. This is not up. This is not down. To believe so would be as dumb as thinking that on Earth, whichever way you happen to be facing is north. No one on Earth is upside down or on their side. Up on Earth is away from the surface of the Earth, no matter where you are on the Earth. The night. Rivers flow from higher elevation to lower elevation, which is a measure of how far away you are from the surface of the Earth. This has nothing to do with flowing in any particular direction along the surface. This is also why people who make videos acting confused about why elevation doesn't change between various sea level locations around the world are among the dumbest people alive. This is sea level. This is sea level. This is above sea level. This is above sea level. That's what elevation means. Learn the definitions of words before you try to use them in a sentence.
Number 8 of this, I decided to do a little bit of a commentary on his number 7 point, rivers can't flow uphill. And the reason why I chose to go ahead and do this little short summary, not to really hit on rivers flowing uphill, because Professor Dave in this segment really he shows the absolute desperation of this entire systematic movement to maintain the fantasy, to help keep it intact, as it were, because it is definitely falling apart. Showing rivers to flow uphill, he tilts the earth, and it's obviously he's in your face showing a slope, he's showing things sideways, and then he says that the rivers is not flowing uphill, it flows from elevation. So he says that elevation, although it is sideways and although it is lower than where the river would flow, because it is elevation, it will flow down, although the down that he is showing here is actually up. And this coincides with what he's saying, there is no up or down in space. He very emphatically says that there's no up or down, that relative, and see, this is where law of relativity, I think, comes in, the deception speech. Up is as you draw away from the center of Earth, that is your up, although it's down. And so there's no up or down, but yeah, earlier he was harping on the whole gravity force, velocity force always goes down. So Professor Dave definitely says there is a up and down when it comes to explaining gravity, but there is no up or down when it comes to not being able to explain being on the side of a ball, being sideways and whatnot. So the double speech continues, but here's where I want to really give Professor Dave and guys like him a little word of advice, and going back to his opening segment here where he shows the globe and compared and side by side with the so-called flat plane that they portray. He said, here's the problem with turning a globe into a flat plane. Well, Professor Dave, here's the problem with comparing your globe to your version of a flat plane, or a flat surface in general. Never put these two objects side by side, because it exposes you for the fraud that you are, or the fraud that the narrative actually is. As you see here, the globe is sideways. The land that you have portrayed on the side of the globe is basically sideways and upside down, and you have the flat plane as a flat plane. So what these globalists will try to convince people in believing that this here surface on the flat earth is level, but yet the land on the side of the globe is also level. So you're looking at this version of level, and you're looking at the sideways version of level, which is an absolute fantasy. Even within their narrative, this does not work. Okay, we go to the movie Star Wars. I've made this point in another video that I think I'm taking it down. Oh no, it's a video entitled Knowing Up From Down. And the movie Star Wars basically exposes the flaw in the globe model. Okay, the Death Star is basically a giant space station supposedly, but it's actually a planet. It's a smaller version of a planet. And here they illustrate that you cannot exist on the side of a planet's surface. If you're going to have a planet scenario, this is the only way that you can exist on it. You would have to create internal shelving, which would be level for all human life to exist. Realistically, even within their fantasy, their science fiction, the main science fiction go-to movie, Star Wars, is exposing the flaw of living on a ball. They incorporate shelving to make the living situation realistic, but by showing here they have shelves inside the Death Star. So here, Professor Dave, is why planet Earth will never work. You can't live on a ball. Up is up, down is down. You can't have it both ways for the sake of convenience for your argument. And that's basically it. I mean, that's game over right there, Professor. So I'm not going to harp on this too long. It's not worth it. I just want to make this video for the sake of people who encounter these type of arguments. And no doubt, what will stand out mostly about people who defend this fantasy is they will use intimidation tactics. They will talk rudely. They will use so-called formulas that they themselves don't understand. They had learned a method of speaking with confidence and in-your-face rudeness, and with the hopeful effect of coming across as being intellectual. In reality, they are really exposing their delusional state. Because I believe this guy Dave understands that the globe argument has been utterly defeated. That's why we have all these so-called trolls. Well, they are trolls. Troll videos to so-called prove that flat Earth has been debunked. Flat Earth has been debunked and is easily debunked, where in reality it is the opposite. The reality of the palace Earth that the Lord God has created is what we experience every day and what they experience every day. And guys like Professor Dave will have to answer for this one day as they face the Almighty Creator, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. See here, World War II battle map planning, flat plane. Real world scenarios require real world maps, and the real world map is a flat plane. All archives will show military generals planning on a flat surface. This is the real world scenario. Dress it up with a concave lens, you still got a flat plane. This is reality.
Many flat earthers remain dumbfounded by the idea that the Earth is slightly closer to the sun in winter than in summer. As I've said before, winter up north is summer down south, and vice versa. So your confusion is one of northern hemisphere narcissism, but it is also one of complete ignorance. Here's the Earth. Here's the light coming from the sun. Look at this portion. It hits the Earth straight on. Look at this portion. Because of the curvature of the Earth, the light hits the surface at an angle and is therefore distributed around a greater area. Same amount of heat distributed around a larger area, lower average temperature. This is absolutely trivial to understand. It's why
and this point here where Professor Dave is claiming that flat earthers are perplexed at the Earth being closer to the sun in wintertime. If flat earthers are trying to go this area to argue, you're not very smart. I believe Professor Dave is throwing another red herring. Keep using that word over and over. A real flat earther, a real truther that won't bother with this nonsense of tilt and angling to a sun that's 93 million miles away. What we do here, we pull out the ace in the hole and we just show this clip. I'm a clip similar to this. I recommend every flat earther download a clip, make a clip, and download it, have it in your phone, whip it out and show people this. You know, you see this, okay? This is the most feared imagery of planet Earth believers. This is a very terrifying image to them because it's the end all, okay? There you got the sun in the clouds. We experience this daily. So you would have to be the hard line. I make a choice to deny this reality, and I am going to still say the sun is 93 million miles away. When one looks at this image, one would have to say, I am denying what I see, and I will still believe the official NASA, Copernicus, whatever, DeGrasse Tyson, all these people, Bill Nye. I will follow those guys to the end and say that this image is not real, and the Earth and the sun is really 93 million miles away. End of story.